For this project, we, Ariana Correa, Patricia Herrera, Stephanie Sinclair, and Tingwei Zhao, will be looking at the 5-second rule to hopefully bring insight into its validity, origins, and when the rule is most applicable. So what is the 5-second rule exactly? Well, first, we need to start by defining what a myth and what a folklore is. A myth is a traditional story, oftentimes one concerning early people, explaining some natural phenomenon or involving the supernatural. More broadly, a myth is a widely held but false belief or idea. On the other hand, a folklore is the traditional beliefs, customs, and stories of communities. Some folklore have scientific basis, but others contradict science. Due to the differences in the definitions, it's safe to say the 5-second rule is a myth. Now let's define the 5-second rule. According to Google, it's a Western cultural food hygiene myth that states that there is a defined window where it is permissible to pick up food after it has been dropped and thus contaminated. The rule first appeared in 1995. However, it had been around long before this first written account. There are 2 suggested origins for the food folklore. First, it can be traced back to Genghis Khan, a 13th century Mongol ruler who threw many lavish banquets. It is rumored that at these banquets, if food fell on the floor, it could stay there as long as Khan allowed. This was rooted in the idea that any food prepared for the ruler was superior and would stay good to eat no matter what. At the time, this was the Khan rule. Mind you, that in the 13th century, little was known about foodborne illnesses and microorganisms. The rule has also been traced back to Julia Child, an American chef and television personality. In 1963, on her televised cooking show, Julia was attempting to flip a potato pancake in a pan. However, the flip failed and the pancake fell on the stovetop, to which she said, "You can always pick it up if you are alone in the kitchen. Who is going to see?" Food contamination on a popular television show further catapulted the idea of the 5-second rule into popular imagination. Let's look at it closer in practice. Imagine that you are in a hurry. You are late to an 8 a.m. class and you need to eat something quickly before you head out the door. So, you decide to pop a piece of bread in the toaster for a quick on-the-go breakfast. But since you were rushing, you drop your toast and it hits the floor before you get the chance to eat it. What do? Do you throw away the now dirty toast or do you implement the 5-second rule? I mean, besides, it couldn't have gotten that dirty. It wasn't on the ground for more than 5 seconds before you picked it up. Let's look at an example of this. Have a girl dropping a chip. Will she eat it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thankfully, her friends stopped her from eating a contaminated chip. So, what contributes to whether or not one eats the food that has been contaminated? Does the amount of time really make a difference, whether or not you would eat the food off the floor? Or are our judgments more based on what type of food has been dropped? Obviously, food we value more and like better we will be more keen to eat despite the fact that it may have hit a dirty surface. For example, this girl drops a carrot and she decides not to eat it because she doesn't value the carrot. However, when she drops the Cheez-It, despite it falling on the floor, picks it up and consumes it.
5-second rule.
Some research behind the rule by Mythbusters tested out the 5-second rule in 2005. They conducted tests with both wet and dry foods and the contact time they had with the contaminated surface. They found that contact time was not a determining factor of food edibility, as well as found that wet food picked up more bacteria than dry food did. The test was ran with a wet piece of salami dropped onto a contaminated surface compared to a dry cracker on a contaminated surface. They also ran a side test to determine which surfaces are truly the most contaminated, finding that toilet seats were cleaner than the floors in several locations. However, keep in mind they did not run any statistical tests and had no control groups. Here we have an example of how wet food does get more contaminated than dry food.
At Clemson University tested to see the effects of food contact time with contaminated surfaces. 3 experiments were conducted to determine the survival and transfer rate of Salmonella typhimurium from wood, tile, and carpet to bologna and bread. It was found that S. typhimurium can actually survive up to 4 weeks on dry surfaces in large enough populations to be transferred to foods, and it can be transferred to food almost immediately on contact. This shows that bacteria can not only survive, but also cross-contaminate food even after long periods of time, and this reinforces the importance of sanitation to lower the risk of foodborne illnesses. Another study done by the Food Science Department at Rutgers University used watermelon, bread and butter, and gummy candy on stainless steel, tile, wood, and carpet. They found that the longer contact times did result in transfer of more bacteria, though there were also times when the transfer was almost instantaneous. For example, watermelon's moisture content made transfer easier and it had the highest rate of contamination. Gummies, on the other hand, had a very low transfer rate. It was also found that carpet had a very low transfer rate compared to the stainless steel. It is thought that this was likely because carpet has crevices and the bacteria would fall underneath the surface while the food sat on top.
Time is not a contributing factor to whether or not your food has been contaminated. This myth has been disproved due to the research findings of several different sources. So, what should we do? This research suggests that the best thing we can do is keep your hands, floor, and other surfaces clean. Or just don't eat the job food. This young lady shows what should be done when your food hits a contaminated surface. It's not worth the risk, just eat something else. Here are some of our sources. Thank you.